Hey guys, Cam315 back with another review, and this is going to be a special type of review, and I'm here with my friend Denzel for this episode of my movie reviews about, basically, in an essence, I'm doing a Spider-Man marathon of all the Spider-Man movies that have been, well, the live action ones, not Into the Spider-Verse, but I would love to talk about Into the Spider-Verse later.
So we're doing all the Spider-Man, we're reviewing all the Spider-Man movies?
Because Far From Home's actually coming out Tuesday, this video we're gonna talk about the first three original Spider-Man films, the Sam Raimi Spider-Man films. I'm probably gonna make another video talking about the Amazing Spider-Man little two movies, and then I'll talk about Spider-Man Homecoming on my own. Well, the Amazing Spider-Man and Spider-Man Homecoming on my own. It would I wish we could talk about them because, I know you like those movies. Well, Homecoming, maybe Amazing Spider-Man, not as much, but anyways, this is my Spider-Man marathon to basically go over, or basically do reviews about the past live-action Spider-Man movies leading up to Far From Home, which I've heard non-spoilers reviews is actually a really good movie, and it's gonna be big, and it has good implications for the future of the MCU. And so, yeah, and I was planning on doing this because, one, Spider-Man is my favorite superhero, and this looks like Far From Home is, and what it sounds like from all the reviews is, it looks like it's going to be one of the biggest Spider-Man movies to date. And we've had some pretty big Spider-Man movies, like the very first one, and then Spider-Man 2, and then Homecoming, because there was this first Spider-Man movie in the MCU, and then recently the last Spider-Man movie, before Far From Home, Into the Spider-Verse, was a really big movie. But like I said, we're not going to talk about that film. Maybe I'll talk about that later and what I thought about that. But yeah, so we're going to go through the first three original Sam Raimi films, give our opinions. We won't cover the story because you guys should all know the story. We'll give a brief description about it, and we'll just give our thoughts about we thought about thought about each film, and basically how we feel about like what today's Spider-Man, how it compares to back then. So we're gonna get into Spider-Man, which are most people call it Spider-Man 1 of the Sam Raimi films, and this movie was made in. This movie came out in 2002. Its release date was May 3rd, 2002, which, man, was a long time ago. For its time, it was a pretty big hit because it was one of the few superhero movies that went to the big screen at the time. Because it was basically back then, the only superhero movies we had when we were like really young was the Spider-Man trilogy and that X-Men. Now, I didn't watch X-Men because I'm not a fan of X-Men, but yeah, basically these were the two. Spider-Man was one of the few superhero movies that ever came to theaters, and it was a pretty big hit. Now, I was too young to remember the buzz, and you probably were too, because 2002, I was probably 3 or 4 years old at the time, so I really didn't care about I really didn't hear about the buzz, and I don't even recall if I ever went to see it in theaters. Like, the only one I actually do remember seeing in theaters is probably Spider-Man 3. And we'll get to that later, but basically Spider-Man is the origin story of Spider-Man, the origin story of Peter Parker, where he gets bitten by a radioactive spider and becomes a superhero in the name of Spider-Man. And the villain he goes up against
Green Goblin?
Yeah, the villain he goes up against is Green Goblin. And he's basically, as you all know from the comics, Green Goblin is Norman Osborn.
aka the father of uh Harry.
Yeah, Harry.
Yeah,
Harry Osborn, Peter's best friend in the film, and it was, well, I'll say that Willem Dafoe played a really good role in this because he played Norman Osborn, and he was very in this movie. He was a very conflicted character because, from what I can recall, he lost basically basically lost like the command of his own enterprise, of his own industries, because the board kicked him out.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, in retaliation, he takes the Goblin Serum and it drives him literally insane.
Yeah.
And then Tobey Maguire, he plays Spider-Man. I thought he did okay. Now, as an overall look of it, I do like Tobey Maguire as a Spider-Man. I don't hate him. Personally, I think he's the second best Spider-Man, live-action Spider-Man done. But personally, I think he's a better Peter Parker
Then he is a Spider-Man.
Spider-Man because, I don't know, looking back at it now, and especially comparing today's Spider-Man, I feel like Tom Holland's Spider-Man nails the Peter Parker and the Spider-Man. And,
Like, is it like in the comedic terms or?
well, the Spider-Man, he captures the essence of Spider-Man where he just doesn't stop talking and he annoys his villains and he makes quirky jokes and stuff. And when he's Peter Parker, he's always conflicted, and like even in the coming Far From Home movie, he's gonna be conflicted because of spoilers, Tony Stark's death. But going back to the original, I thought Tobey Maguire was a better Peter Parker because he fit the mold and he looked like an actual nerd, as opposed to really a Spider-Man that gave a lot of quips and stuff like that. And really, when I look at the entire trilogy as a whole, he really didn't really give a lot of quips and stuff like that, from what I can remember. He did say some funny lines at some points, but like "Hey, Gobby" and stuff like that. And yeah, but overall, and I don't hate his Spider-Man interpretation. He's my second favorite. But I prefer him as better Peter Parker than Spider-Man. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I have to agree with you. Spider-Man back in the day seemed a little more, I don't know, he seemed a little too serious compared to the current Spider-Man.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, too serious.
Yeah, because Spider-Man, he does have his serious storylines, but that only comes with his really high personal villains, like a Green Goblin and a Venom, or something else.
Yeah, and like you said, he doesn't really like crack as much like comedy or like much jokes as the current Spider-Man does. And
yeah, and even he doesn't like make as much as funny jokes as say Andrew Garfield's interpretation of the Amazing Spider-Man of those movies, because even he made more quirks. Quips about that. I'll get to that later about the Amazing Spider-Man, what I thought about that. I just have to rewatch both the movies. But anyways, yeah, I thought the first movie was a pretty good movie, and for its time, it's a pretty good movie, and it stands, I would say, pretty well enough today. It's not as strong, but it stands pretty well. For its time, it looks good, but man, when you compare today's Spider-Man to Spider-Man from 2002, you're like, I'm gonna take the 2019 version of Spider-Man over this one, because this one looked like it doesn't look nearly as good and stuff like that. But the costume, it looks good, it looks great, and stuff like that. The one thing is, I can say it did capture like really the essence of what Spider-Man is and stuff like that. My thoughts about the first movie is I like it. I like all the actors in it. Kristen Dunst says Mary Jane. She's good in it. I think she screams too much throughout the entire trilogy, because eventually it gets to the point where it's just literally annoying. Stuff like that, and it's like, okay, come on. But yeah, I like the overall essence of it, and it was also a nice little build up because at the end we all know Harry Osborn, or not Harry Osborn, Norman Osborn dies, and it was only leading up to Norman Osborn finding out who the killer is, because at the end of the film he wanted to get his revenge on Spider-Man for it and stuff like that. It had some heartbreaking moments like the Uncle Ben death and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Also, I guess in an essence, the Norman Osborn death was pretty sad, to say the least, because, you know, it's just someone that meant dearly to Peter basically died, and it was his friend's dad. And yeah, overall, I liked the movie. It's, if I could rank the live action Spider-Man, it's probably my fourth favorite Spider-Man. Well, yeah, right now, well, if you me not seeing Far From Home, it's right now probably my third favorite film of the Spider-Man as a whole, of the live action Spider-Man. So, your thoughts about it?
Um, yeah, like you said, it's like pretty emotional when it comes to like deaths and of like Uncle Ben and Green Goblin and yeah, and that part when like uh, Harry thought that it was Spider-Man who killed um uh, my God, why do I keep forgetting his name?
Norman?
Yeah, Norman. I don't know. Peter. I just no comment actually. I don't know.
So, going on to the same thing, this movie also sets the stage that Peter has to have his responsibilities and stuff like that about protecting his loved ones. That's why they also, at the end of the first Spider-Man movie, that's why he eventually, as much as he would love to be with Mary Jane, he didn't want to because he is Spider-Man. So we jump into Spider-Man 2, which arguably everyone says is, even till this date, everyone says it's the best. Well, other than Into the Spider-Verse, that really people really love, but I would say out of all the live action movies, people say this is the best live action Spider-Man movie they've ever done because of what basically took place. The story was really good from the standpoint of Peter was losing his powers, and he was also being conflicted, like maybe he shouldn't be Spider-Man because everything around him is like, you know, collapsing on him. Like he's always showing late to class, not being on time. He basically losing the love of his life through his hands, and he feels like he's taking on so much responsibility being Spider-Man. There was a point of the movie where once he just didn't have his powers anymore, for that short amount of time, he just was regular Peter Parker, and he was just himself, as if he never had the powers, and he did everything he always set out to do, and he did all that stuff. But until time was calling for him to be Spider-Man, he had to put on the mask and don it because, you know, eventually his powers reactivated. Oh, and also a quick note too. This Spider-Man is completely different from, like, say, the comics version. This Spider-Man is different from the standpoint is that his webs come out of the palm of his wrist instead of him making web shooters. After looking at that now, I always thought that was so weird that it would come out of the palm, but it's something different, I guess you can say.
How did that work?
I don't know.
My veins.
I don't know. But Spider-Man 2 was a good movie. The villain, Dr. Octopus, was a really good conflicted villain because he basically went insane due to his mechanical arms basically, you know...
I don't know, starting to take control of him because that thing on his back.
Oh yeah, it fried, and it literally took control. It was literally like basically not controlling him, but basically telling him what to do and stuff like that. And he was like, also had pretty bad, he was also pretty messed up because of his wife dying in the incident in his lab. And he was making the, I forgot what the thing was, but the mini sun in that building, and when everything started going wrong, it was like, yeah, there was a lot of good stakes in the movie, and I say it's one of my Spider-Man 2 is one of my favorite movies, and it's a definite watch if you haven't seen it at all. It's a very classic movie, and it's a really good one. Arguably one of the best for its time. It looks great, and it's, it was one of the best superhero movies of all time. Even today, people in their list of all-time superhero movies, people put that at their top of their list, like Spider-Man 2. It's usually in their top 5. Not the best, not number 1, but it's usually in their top 5 or even top 10 as a favorite superhero movies. Your thoughts on Spider-Man 2?
My thoughts on Spider-Man 2? I like it actually. I like Doctor Octopus as a villain. How his tragic story began, and how it was his own I don't know his. I don't really know him how to talk. Go on. Jesus.
Well, you mean his inner struggle and conflict to find himself? Is that what you were trying to say?
Yeah.
Yeah, and by the end of the film, he realizes the things he's done was pretty messed up, and it was wrong of him to do that stuff. And he basically, in order to basically save, what looks to be New York, because that sun looked like it would have been engulfed and become bigger as a whole. He basically sacrificed his life to do it, and it was good to see him. I forgot the actor that plays Dr. Octopus, but he did a really good job in this too, and I really liked him. I forgot his name. Well, that's besides the point, but I thought he was a good actor in Spider-Man. Tobey Maguire reprised his role, and also a fun fact that I actually found out leading up to Far From Home is, the funny thing is how Jake Gyllenhaal, who's Mysterio in Far From Home, he was actually supposed to play Peter Parker, our Spider-Man, in Spider-Man 2, because Tobey Maguire was having, I think he had an injury issue or something like that, so he had to actually fight back to keep the role. Otherwise, Jake Gyllenhaal would have been Spider-Man all the way back then. And Spider-Man 2, I believe, came out in 2004. So I gotta check this out. Yeah, it came out in 2004, which was only 2 years after the first Spider-Man. And like I said, it did a good job. It really was the strongest middle point. It was easily the strongest of the trilogy, of the Sam Raimi trilogy and stuff like that. And it was a good sequel to the first Spider-Man because it had stakes, and it really pushed Spider-Man to be a better hero. And also it pushed Peter into doing that. And that's what I kind of like is, I do like the Spider-Man aspect, but I do like seeing the conflicting things of what Peter has to do and the sacrifice he has to make just to be a hero. And it looks like we're getting that in Far From Home too. Mm-hmm. Not from the aspect of Tony Stark's death in the MCU, but the fact that he just wants to be a regular kid and just relax because he's having severe PTSD. So, we're getting into the final movie of the Sam Raimi trilogy of Spider-Man, and that is Spider-Man 3. See, I remember seeing this when I was young. I actually missed school when the movie came out. And early in that morning, I got to see Spider-Man 3, I think the day it came out, yeah. And I thought, back as a kid, it was one of the best movies to date that I've ever seen. Now looking back at it now,
not so much.
Not so much. And I think now when I look at it, it's now I can see why people do not like this movie. Now, we all know the funny meme of Peter Parker dancing in the suit. Hell, they reference that into the Spider-Verse as a funny joke. But man, if there was anything anybody can remember from Spider-Man 3, it is that part when he's just dancing. We're doing the. It's one of the. It's like it's one of the WTF moments, but it's also really funny, and that's why Into the Spider-Verse made a joke about it too. Also, we also get like how in the Flash TV show where when Savager came, we got Emo Barry, or really in the Flash TV show that I watched, we got Emo Barry. In this, we got Emo Peter,
aka Black Spider-Man.
Yeah. A lot of people say this movie was. It's alright, but it's not the best.
Is it just me, or is every I don't know, movie or TV show that has like a opposite of a hero, like an alter ego or something, like a bad version of the hero, like I don't know, not so good.
Mm-hmm. Or are you saying they usually don't portray a good job?
Yeah, the story itself.
I guess in essence you can say that, because even with the Flash in season 3 with Salvatore, it was now looking back at it, it's that's arguably the worst season of the Flash, because it's nothing made no sense. And it was just yeah. But going back to Spider-Man 3, it's okay. So basically, we all know the whole black suit Spider-Man story, where an alien symbiote comes down from Jonah Jameson's son's spaceship, and crash lands onto Earth. And eventually Spider-Man attaches itself to Spider-Man, and Spider-Man becomes Black Suit Spider-Man, who has increased strength, and everything about it is nullified. The only downside to him being Black Suit Spider-Man is he can't control the rage. And the symbiote literally affects his mood, and he basically goes from being a super nice guy to an overly aggressive jerk and stuff like that. And it was really shown in the movie how the symbiote affected him and stuff like that, and how much of a really a-hole he was in the film, and really self-conceited he was because of the symbiote and stuff like that. But yeah, the villains in this movie became the trope of where fans claim that superhero movies need to stop having 2 or more villains, because there were 3 different villains in this film. New Goblin, who was Harry Osborn, played by James Franco. Sandman, I forgot the actor who played Sandman. And then at the end we have Venom, which was a total mistake when you look back at it now. They should have just saved Venom if they were going to make Spider-Man 4. But they rushed Venom in there at the final climax of the film, and the final climax was kind of a huge mess if you ask me. And it's just it's supposed to cap off really the Sam Raimi trilogy, and I just feel like it didn't do really an effective job like the first 2 movies. Actually, when I now look back at it now, and it's man, I can understand why people say it's bad.
Yeah. Honestly, yeah, like you said, I felt a little too rushed. But I the one thing I do kind of like that the Sandman confessed to Peter what truly happened to his uncle.
Oh yeah,
at least.
It was a little heartbreaking scene, but it was also but at the same time, you can also look at the Sandman and be huh, what a shocking coincidence that he killed Uncle Ben. And you know what? He's fighting Spider-Man, who happens to be Uncle Ben's nephew. Which is yeah, kind of cool. I feel like they just put the Sandman in there. Well, they could have still had him in there, but they made that little storyline where he was actually had a connection to the death of Uncle Ben, just a plot point. So when Peter gets the Black Suit Spider-Man suit, he's just enraged and wants to really kill the guy. And it's like, okay. And then the whole Harry Osborn stuff, it was alright, but the fact that, and this eventually became the trope of became the trope of when Harry Osborn starts to get more alliterations as the Green Goblin, as the first, instead of just mainly being Norman Osborn. But yeah, I would say the only thing is, and it was also funny when, after he fought Spider-Man, he kind of basically pretended like, oh, he was alright in the head, and he just like forgot everything. But then when you had that fight scene in his mansion, and he's basically like, I'm gonna kick your you-know-what to Peter and stuff like that, and it was like, well, dang. What's her, Bryce Dallas Howard played Gwen Stacy in the film. We all know Bryce Dallas Howard, who's basically one of the main characters in Jurassic World. I thought she did an okay job of what she was given. I feel like she was just another forced, character / little bit of love interest for really when Peter was wearing the black suit Spider-Man to hit up on her and stuff like that.
Looking back to all the Spider-Man movies now, which love interest do you prefer more, Mary Jane or Gwen Stacy?
As of right now, well, you can also put Liz Allen from Homecoming, but
there wasn't really much.
There's not much to go on, and we'll see how Zendaya does in the love interest role when in Far From Home. But I would probably say Emma Stone's performance as Gwen Stacy in The Amazing Spider-Man. I feel like you could actually feel like there was genuine love between Peter Parker and his love interest and stuff like that. Nothing against Kristen Dunst's Mary Jane. It's just, especially in this movie, and really when you go look across the whole trilogy, Mary Jane in this trilogy, I hate to be really, excuse my language, but she was really bitchy throughout the entire trilogy. Like, with what was going on. Like, one minute she wanted this, and then when she didn't get what she wanted, she would always complain about it. Or how in Spider-Man 3, they were dating at first, and then when she doesn't get her way, she acts like a total douchebag to Peter. And when Peter actually wants to go propose to her, and he actually gives the chance to, she basically, like, curves, or basically blocks him from doing it because Harry's forcing her into a relationship with him. And it's like, this, man, I'm like, she was not, when you look at the entire trilogy, she was not really a good character. It's just she came across as a whiny, spoiled brat.
Kind of a shame because I love redheads.
And it's just, and even in Spider-Man 3, she came so much across like a brat in this film. Like, she would have some of the strangest mood swings. Like, after the first act in the arc, when she's kissing all over Peter, all of a sudden, and she has a whole right to be turned off about Peter kissing against Stacy as Spider-Man, but after really that's when she started to get in the phase where she's like, and it was like, it's kind of a whole mumbo-jumbo mess. And then come to think of it, when they forced Venom in just the last final part for the final battle, it's like, my goodness, and Jesus, when you look at his design, holy crap, you'll be taking the Venom movie 10 times better. And that's what everyone said when that movie, after that movie released. They're like, the new Venom with Tom Hardy was so much of a better Venom than the one from Spider-Man 3. And mostly because no one liked that Venom. He looked disgusting and he looked sick. And when I mean sick, not sick like, oh, he looks sick, cool. No, I'm talking about sick where it's like, oh god, he looks terrible. But, oh yeah, and then the actor who did play Eddie Brock slash Venom, Topher Grace. God, hate to be rude, not to say nothing bad about his acting, but man, he was not any good. And plus, when he was fighting as Batman and he had the little unraveling of his face, it was like, that's so weird.
But I'd say it suits him. I'd say it suits the Venom aspect because Venom's supposed to be pretty disgusting from what I can tell.
Well, he looks more intimidating and more like you'd be disgusted in the newer film because he actually looks like Venom. This doesn't really look like Venom. Yeah. Other than that, really, what did you think of Spider-Man 3?
Well, looking back at it now, when I was little, I enjoyed it, like you said. But like I said, looking back at it now, not so happy about it anymore.
It's well, it isn't. It's a fact. Well, if I were to rank it, it's not bad, but it's not good either. It's probably literally down to lowest. Like my rank, like literally, I would say it's above Amazing Spider-Man 2, but not above the first Amazing Spider-Man film. I thought that was better than. I thought Amazing Spider-Man 1 was better than Spider-Man 3. And yeah, in my opinion, it's like you said. When I was young, I thought it was cool. I thought it was the best Spider-Man movie I've ever seen. Now, looking back at now, it's like, oh, there is some problems in this film. And
how our minds changed.
yeah, it's a big thing too, because it's like when you watch something or you play a video game that you thought was fun or was really good as a kid, now when you replay it, you start to have an opinion like, man, things aren't as good as they used to. Things aren't as good as I thought they were. Mm-hmm. So that was the Spider-Man Sam Raimi trilogy. As a whole, it was. Now, as a whole, it was successful to say the least. It made a lot of money. Sadly, they didn't get to do Spider-Man 4. But hey, what can you do about it? But as a whole, the trilogy, I would say, was pretty good. Strongest point was Spider-Man 2, yet its lowest closeout to the trilogy was Spider-Man 3, and didn't do nearly as good. And if I'm ranking the trilogy as a whole, it's Spider-Man 2, Spider-Man, and then Spider-Man 3. Your rankings when it comes to the movies?
I'd say Spider-Man 3, Spider-Man 1, and then Spider-Man 2.
That's from favorite to...
No, that's from least favorite.
Oh, least favorite to favorite? Okay. Yeah, I thought the trilogy was good for what it was. For its time, it was a good trilogy. It was good. It was good for what we got, and we thought that was it. We thought that was just... We were never going to get another Spider-Man movie again until Amazing Spider-Man rears its ugly... Well, not its ugly, but its head into the picture, and that's when was a new take on Spider-Man and stuff like that. And I'm going to get to that probably tomorrow in a video tomorrow, as I'll upload that probably Sunday and stuff like that. And yeah, but if I'm going to rate the Spider-Man film, Spider-Man 1 gets a 8 out of 10, Spider-Man 2, 9 out of 10, and then Spider-Man 3, 6 out of 10. I would put it on 5 out of 10, but, I'll give it a 6 because...
Nostalgia?
Nostalgia, really. And stuff like that, but I'll give it a 6 out of 10. So basically, Spider-Man 1 gets a B, Spider-Man 2 gets an A, and Spider-Man 3 gets a D. Your rankings of the movie, or your grading of the movies?
Spider-Man 1, 7 out of 10. Okay. Spider-Man 2, I guess I'd give it an 8 out of 10. Spider-Man 3, 6 out of 10. 6 out of 10.
Okay. Is there any reason why you gave Spider-Man, the first two, like Spider-Man, you gave that one a 7 out of 10, and Spider-Man 2, you gave that an 8 out of 10? Just out of pure curiosity.
I guess the main reason is because I know Spider-Man 2 a little more than Spider-Man 1, I guess.
Okay, okay. Is there any like internal reason separately of Spider-Man 1 why you give that a 7 out of 10?
Um, I guess for the reason that I don't know that he was blamed for the death of his best friend's father. I don't know. Spider-Man 2, I give it an 8 out of 10 because he at least, I don't know, the love of his life at least found out why he was Spider-Man and stuff.
But that's Denzel's reasons and stuff like that. So, yeah, that is basically to conclude this episode of movie reviews.
Yes, and I'm so sorry I wasn't able to speak clearly when it comes to like giving my thoughts onto these movies. Oh my god, I promise I'll do better next time.
Well, if you do get a chance to review the others films with us, stuff like that,
or anything else.
yeah, but really, yeah, that's basically it of our Spider-Man Sam Raimi trilogy film and stuff like that. And then that's what we thought. So our next video will probably be about Amazing Spider-Man, because actually, when you think about it, since he might be here today, I mean, we might as well just do all the Spider-Man movies and talk about them. So, but they'll just be uploaded on different days and stuff like that. But yeah, this was the first alliteration of Spider-Man, and on the next video we'll be talking about the second alliteration of Spider-Man, which is Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man, more being pronounced in the two movies, The Amazing Spider-Man. So this has been Cam315,
and this is the Red Wolf / Denzel, whatever the hell you want to call me. And
we're signing out. If you were big fans of these movies, please leave down a comment about what you thought about the movies and your opinion and because I would like to see what you guys would think about it. And also, if you'd like to leave a like on the like button, or even subscribe if you like. I do different type of content. Well, not as much, but I do talk about my favorite sports teams, as well as give other movie reviews, as well as TV show reviews of TV shows that I watch and that I like, and stuff like that. And sometimes Denzel might be on a board, but when I go back to school, he will not be unless I'm in town back in California, because, you know, stuff like that. But otherwise than that, till then, see you guys later. So that's sneezing again. Now that's a throwback to a certain episode if you go back and watch one of my TV show reviews. Well,
I mean, I did it in the beginning.
Till then, guys, catch you later.